Bienvenue à Weeaboo Hell. C'est Weeaboo Hell. Ou peut-être que non. Je m'appelle Anime Bill. Je n'aime que l'anime Profond et artistique. La scène de l'ascenseur est géniale. Vous ne savez pas de quoi vous parlez. Je préfère la travers l'intérieur d'Ian Curtis. Que signifient les lignes électriques pour vous? Je demande, je ne sais pas.
Oui, Anime Bill. Mais qu'en est-il de Jeff Bezos? Qu'en sert-il décapité? En tant que membre du comité, la sécurité publique, c'est plus important pour moi que Waifu. Waifu ne peut plus me réveiller. Je ne peux que me plaire à jeûner. De préférence effectuée à l'envers. So, as I was saying before I went off to university there, I've been doing the parkour thing that was hot as balls, so I decided the fastest way between 2 points was to make the first point and the last point the place I'm standing.
It's very efficient.
Yeah, I think it makes me a master traceur. That's another French thing, parkour.
Traceur?
Un robber petit.
Where do we start with this other than, with where we started with this?
Where do we start with this? We could start with some proper nouns, some title, I guess. The first show today was Serial Experiments Lain.
An oldie that we've been meaning to get to.
It may have been introduced to you in college as Un Chien Andalou, featuring a fucking knife slowly going through the surface of someone's eye very artistically.
This episode started out in concept as an episode called Fine, I'll Watch It, and then we watched like two very highly regarded classics. The other one is going to be Steins Gate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then as we were watching, it was Lain specifically. As we were watching Lain specifically, we could not stop making film school jokes.
Yeah, we constant film school jokes, constant fake French dialogue. I think my borderline racist American ass said the word baguette around 46 times.
So that's kind of the shape that this episode ended up taking. And that's I was gonna take some fucking notes about this, but I'm not I don't know, where do you want to start with the conversation here? Because I'm like,
that's an interesting question. It's a hard one to jump right in. I've never liked a show and been so befuddled on this program. It's kind of an interesting place.
Yeah, I definitely know that it's good. Like, I'm pretty sure that it's good. I think it's good. I don't know what that's not entirely true. I kind of know what it is.
Watching Lain reminds me of how everyone described fucking House of Leaves when it came out, because, I don't know, House of Leaves is pretty easy to follow along. It's just like doing 4 simple things at once.
Yeah, that's about fair.
This is very dedicated to art film forms of conveying information, and I think the thing that makes this show really interesting is that its concerns, like its topics, in terms of like the technology it's interrogating and the sort of part of the human experience is interrogating, it's all in the cyberpunk niche, but it has ditched all of the typical cyberpunk vehicle. Like, there's no deliberator shit. The evil corporation comes in after the episodes we watch. Like, the start of the episodes that we watched for this podcast episodes are basically just an art film about a teenager in high school.
It's very decompressed.
And it is very, that's true, it is very decompressed.
Well,
except when it does like this one binge about a fake drug, and then it goes right back to decompressed land.
Yeah, I think in 2020, it's going to be really difficult to talk about Serial Experiments Lain without sort of thinking about it in the context of the way things went, I guess, as it's this commentary on, technology. This is 1998 right here, right? And it was a commentary on technology and the early internet. Like, this was when the World Wide Web was kind of a thing. It existed, I guess, but
we're
not a whole lot of people were using it. Yeah, there's like a bunch of early adopters, certainly. Like, people were definitely stealing anime already.
And our thinky show writer, or wait, was this adapted from anything?
Nope. This is an original thing, kind of like
this is an original. Good on them. So yeah, our thinky writing staff is very concerned that the emerging technology is going to make us more depersonalized and lose our sense of self, and
I think he was insane.
I know. Congratulations. I know. Threw one from the 3-point line, I guess. So yeah, this was written by Stephen Curry.
Honestly, it feels like it was written by William Gibson, but obvious influence.
Very true, and that is probably the highest praise I can give this show.
Well, it feels like early Neil Stephenson, whereas Steins Gate later feels like late Neil Stephenson.
Yeah. Lain definitely isn't fake smart, like, fake smart. There are shows I like that are fake smart.
What's an example of that?
An example, I don't know, Ergo Proxy.
Okay, alright.
I wasn't super into it, but like, Ergo Proxy is, in fact, also just concerned of all this technology shit. But it's they're saying, we're saying a lot to you right now, aren't we, man? Leans in closer. Do you see what's happening here between you and me and this future we've built?
I feel like I'm not sure if Code Geass was trying to say more than it said. At times it kind of felt like it was. And, but at the end of the day, it was still Code Geass.
That's a great question. Like, if you make a stupid, loud opera about a guy who's supposed to be a strategic genius on the world stage, is that, like, your reach exceeding your grasp, or are they just assuming you get that you're still in the same territory? They just wanted it to be about a theoretically smart person.
I think I mentioned this already on this show, but I went back and watched Code Geass again, and then I watched Death Note again, and like, because they're sort of thought of as similar shows, right? Just over the top info warfare shows. Man, Code Geass is fucking stupid. Like, it's real stupid. Like, I think Death Note, kind of gets a little bit of shit. It's affectionate shit, but shit nonetheless for, like, the potato chip thing. Or in terms of its, like, direction and the stuff that it's got on its mind, it's a pretty smart show. Code Geass is
a
not.
Pretty smart show. I think during the movie I described the fucking anime's tone as just like sort of an over-the-top play kind of thing. Like, everything's just very overacted, but it's still smart things written by smart people. Whereas Code Geass's bag of fun was, okay, so 3 pieces of background about me, or maybe 2. I come from a broadly stereotypical Negro background, and I also did the whole Prince and Columbia shuffle. Which I'm not saying to jerk myself off, but to say that, in theory, I have a decent vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to describing Code Geass, I can just only think of my sister walking in and saying, "Nigga, this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen," and closing the fucking door. And I will call about her, "No, you don't understand. It's..."
Oh, God.
He's the inheritor of the fake British future throne. Please believe me. Please understand me. This is art. So yeah, this show has a sort of ballsy opening power move and just opening with a suicide there.
Except it's like a metaphorical suicide, right? God, I feel like a moron talking about this.
It's fine. So yeah, on page 40 of Ulysses over here, hey everyone, welcome to our fucking Ulysses podcast. We're gonna sort of read it in 16-page bursts, kind of drunk, and just stumble up to the mic and say, yeah, so this guy is a kind of a literal cuckold. That's interesting, right?
River Run, past Even Adams, from Swerve Shore to Bend of Bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. Sir Tristram, Violeur d'Amour, fro over the short sea, had Passenger re-arrived from North America. America, what the fuck is he? Okay. On the side of the scraggy isthmus of Europe Minor to wield your flight of his Penisolite war, nor had topsoil's rocks by the stream Oconee exaggerated themselves to Lawrence County's Gorgeois while they went doubling their mumper all the time, nor a voice of I can't. I only got 8 lines in. Motherfucker.
Great. Oh man.
Okay, you go on. You have things to say. I don't.
So I've wanted to watch the show for a while, and I don't know how it fucking happened, but somehow in all the input about this show and the time it came out, not even the time it came out, these shows are separated by like 10 years, but for some reason I had visually linked the show with what turned out to be Frankenfran. Like, this entire time before I actually saw Serial Experiments Lain I thought it was about someone's like stitched together blonde Frankenstein waifu.
That's
so
strange.
boy was I thrown for a fucking loop when the fucking
just power lines
PowerPoint
intensify.
transition slides came in.
Present day. Present time. Yeah, I gotta tell you, Lain, like many classics, is one of those series that I watched it a very long time ago. And it was what it was, and from then on, I would often mention to people that I had seen it. Even though
you just point at your medals, say, "Yeah, that was me. 35th Infantry, first over the hill, last out."
I think I was something like 19. It was like my sophomore, junior year of college when I watched it. So, Lain, right, is a show about the anxieties of the approaching or towards the approaching digital world, right? The depersonalization that they sort of fear is going to come of the World Wide Web and everything that it brings with it, and sort of the sort of singularity, right? That's it's not quite the singularity that's happened, but like in the last 20 years or whatever, right? Technology, digital technology has kind of sped up to many times the pace that it was sort of going forward at, like in the century or half century previous, right?
I mean, I'd say that Serial Experiments Lain takes place in about what we call 2015. Yeah, it does this fun thing where it sort of amalgamates the upcoming wave of technology with all the stuff that's been coming before with the television stuff, and it's all this one big techno fuck mass called The Wired.
The Wired, yeah. Which I guess I don't know if the World Wide Web had a name yet. Maybe it didn't. But this is sort of the name that it kind of comes up with for the World Wide Web. I know that the internet had existed since, I guess, technically the late 70s. I could be very wrong, but like the internet had existed in some form since I think the late 70s. And it's just about to become a more, let's say, populist technology.
Yeah. And this show loves its shots of wiring, by the way, like fucking power lines everywhere.
Yeah, it's a metaphor or something.
I think it's a metaphor for staring at an electrician's journal for 48 hours in a row without blinking. And everything just looks like a street corner in Mumbai because of it.
There's just this buzzing. It's like the fucking cicadas from fucking Evangelion. Instead of cicadas, it's just the buzzing of power lines. And I feel like slightly less of an idiot not knowing what this thing is about, because reportedly not even the creators can agree what this is about.
Oh man, that'd be a verbal boxing match I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
They have this thing, right, called Z-Rust, which is essentially an aged vision of the future. And this is a fun show in particular to come back to after information age technology has marched along a bit further.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the usual, haha, look how far off these dumbasses were, but to their credit, just a lot of, yeah, indeed.
You are correct.
I enjoyed that bit about it. But yeah, when you talk about Z-Rust, or, when people use the term like ray gun gothic to describe a certain type of space sci-fi, this is like the old cyberpunk really gets that feeling quickly.
Well, yeah, this is like Apple II Gothic. Well, maybe a little bit further on than Apple II. I think the
Apple II Gothic. I love that.
I think the iMac, the first iMac, came about a year or so after this show, and that was like a big fucking deal, as I remember. Here's the thing: my background on the history of information technology is perhaps not the most solid, but I do know that the introduction of the iMac was a really big fucking deal, and this aired about almost exactly a year before it was released to the public. I think what it did was, I don't know, I think it made personal computing just like way the fuck easier. So we got Lain here, right? Who
they do something with this character that I normally can't stand, in that for most of this she is basically this reactive board of wood, but I think I think I understand something about that archetype now that I didn't before that show.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can only get away with that shit when what the fuck is happening is so bonkers or hard to grasp that you don't really want a complex interiority to sort through on top of that.
Well, she's Dumbo, essentially.
She's Dumbo?
She's Dumbo. Like, Dumbo, the movie, right? The movie from, like, the 30s is not so much about Dumbo. I mean, I guess it is, but it's mostly just about this interesting world of the circus that Dumbo sort of, is born into, and he's very much just kind of there observing it, right? And Lain, sort of as a character, is written, I think, to be as silent an observer as possible. Like, the thing is that she doesn't really have any, technological or social skills to speak of. She just kind of appears sort of before the scenes taking place in order to kind of take them in, and you're never really sure how she feels about them. And this way she functions as a really, I don't know, a kind of interesting proxy for the viewer and the viewer's own sort of at the time kind of unsureness about the future that information technology was going to bring them. Right? It differs from, your kind of bland, this is you guy that I often kind of rail
Grate
against.
our teeth silently into a fine powder.
That I rail against, and that this show is absolutely not a power fantasy by any stretch of the imagination, so much as it is kind of a I don't know, like a little Nickelodeon.
Twin Peaks and a MacBook.
Somewhat.
Much more structured than Twin Peaks. That's probably a bad comparison.
Well, no, there's a little bit of Lynch in there. A little bit. I think if I had to assign a specific filmmaker to, kind of this thing's aesthetic, I guess, I don't know. Not quite Jim Jarmusch, but like he's getting there.
What if Lars von Trier wasn't a sex offender?
I'm not sure that's right either, but I don't know, maybe. I haven't actually watched much of Lars von Trier's work. He's like one of those, very important filmmakers
kind of
who I just...
repetitive to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Film School Hell. How are you doing? I'm blind auteur.
If I had any bona fides going into this episode, they're fucking gone now.
We'll talk about the fucking Z-Rust thing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the little world-building facets have that sort of amusing, I guess, lack of sheen to them now. Like, they have the mysterious accelerating nanomachine drug, which, as far as I can tell, is just Adderall plus nanobots. Microchip Adderall.
It seems to be Adderall that unfailingly makes you overdose. Near as I can tell.
Which is a terrible business model for any gang.
Just schizophrenia in pill form. And that's like a fun thing to talk about. I think in the second or third episode, there's a nightclub shooting, right? So this is 1998. A year later, or perhaps even later that year, we get Columbine. So it's actually very fascinating.
The way we're used to.
Yeah, it's like, I think at some point there's, some message board conversation, and it's treated like, oh man, some guy freaked out in a club and a couple of people died, as though, it was an unfortunate accident. And so here we are in 2020.
Well, that sucked. There is a textual layer of, these are alienated people that they're going for.
Yeah.
It's just amusing because it doesn't necessarily try to play with your reactions the way it might expect around that topic.
Well, yeah, it's all, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's all very matter of fact, because there is something kind of subjective about it.
It's almost like a portrayal of a police shooting right before, like, the fucking Rodney King riots.
Probably, yeah.
And so it has that amusing, I guess, lack of interplay. They're way more focused on other facets of the situation.
Well, yeah, it's because the scene is not about this guy is shooting these people in this nightclub. It's this guy is losing his
Mystery
shit.
Substance X, yeah.
Tweaking on, like Mystery Substance X, and it has compelled him to shoot a couple people in the nightclub. But really, the important thing is that he's tweaking on Mystery Subject X, and it has something to do with Lain, and she even interacts with him as though she knows more than she actually does. And I think it's one of those... I think I'm wasting my time looking for, like, something diegetic here.
Okay, it's doing the fucking art film thing where there are multiple versions of her and she's not aware of all of them, and what does this mean? And we must all stare into the sky and contemplate our ancestors and what our actions mean. And then I get a B on a paper and I go home.
I don't want to look like I'm trying to solve this show, right? Because diegesis is kind of only halfway matters in stuff like this. It's definitely...
L'experience.
Well, like, when there's 6 layers of metaphor in this show, you know, kind of the way that there is in this show, then I'm not so certain that looking for, like I said, sort of a diegetic answer to what's happening at any given time is going to bring you any closer to actually... I don't know, unraveling the scene.
That's a fair point. It's not necessarily a productive use of our limited time on Earth. Like, I'm not going to be on my deathbed and think, oh, her keys were on the tabletop. Of course, that's what it meant.
But then again, I don't really have a, what would you call it, decoding of that scene either. I'm not actually
I don't have a decoding,
much.
But I do have a punchline. And boy, is that my fucking exchange for insight in my life.
Oh?
I watched a very different movie recently, Extraction, but it had the same thing. A secret nightclub that 13-year-olds are sneaking into and partying with each other. And all I could think during Extraction, during that scene, and all I could think during this scene in fucking Serial Experiments Lain is, what kind of fucking loser was I in high school?
I feel like they don't really have under 18 nightclubs in the States. Or maybe they do. I don't know. I remember at some point, you know, in my adolescence, early adulthood, being on, you know, certain image boards, and they would pass around, you know, like the dumb fucking photos taken of, you know, from under 18 nightclubs, you know, like by photographers hired by the nightclubs in order to hype the place up, and just how,
What, the sick moves of kids that can't drive themselves home?
Well, they didn't exactly seem too lit. Yeah, I don't know if this was UK or Canada. I don't know. If these exist in the States, I have never fucking heard of them. Maybe they do. Maybe it's a West Coast thing. I don't know. But I do not think that you are a fucking loser for never having gone to one of these nightclubs, is the point I'm trying to make.
Anime keeps giving me these, like, fantasies that I can never fulfill. Being in a youth nightclub as a teenager instead of staring at my D20 and wondering if there's a way to make an 18-sided die out of it.
Oh, being in high school and having my own apartment?
I am more likely to learn to fly like Goku and punch a meteorite in half than have my own apartment before I'm 35. And I'm not a washout. I don't know, advertising muckety muck man. I'm great. It's fantastic. And there is just this practical wall.
I mean, if they figure out that you don't actually ever have to go back into the office again, like ever, you could follow us out to San Diego, because we're talking about relocating there perhaps in the next, 4 or 5 years maybe.
Oh, you want to be in the fucking eastern part of the Roman Empire? Okay, I know it's confusing because San Diego's in the western part of America, but the fucking idea here is that as the Union, you want to be a bit further from the DC epicenter, maybe?
It could be nice. I think the event that you're talking about is going to be far more brown-colored and disappointing than you're saying. Perhaps a little bit less loud, but it's for the seals and the Mexican food for the most part.
Seals and Mexican food. Well, I hope you enjoy that new frontier, Inside the Wired, where there may be artful transition slides of such phrases as, "Who is Lain? Lain of the Wired.
Bzzz.
I have only given up my body." And, of course, God is here. That is my favorite one, by the way. Just God is here. That's what I just... sat down and thought, okay, I should just take out my fucking notepad and put down my cell phone because we're gonna need to have a fucking punch out with this one for me to derive some fucking meaning from it. But I'm glad it was that way. And by the way, if you look at one of the old fucking, I don't know if it's like a preview image or DVD case, look at the fucking Wikipedia image of this show. It has the fucking power lines in the photo behind the main character.
They're just always fucking there.
So that's how fucking, I don't know, hard-coded into its motifs this show is. But yeah, Serial Experiments Lain is recommended for solo viewings, either extremely sober or extremely peyoted.
Yeah, I would say you'd get bored if you were drunk or high. Maybe if you were stoned, you could get something out of it, but don't drink and watch this show. It's
I would say that
it's not gonna do it for you.
Illegal weed might get you there. Legal weed, you're gonna sort of shrug.
Yeah, you might actually just fall asleep, which is not to say that it's boring. It's just it's a very deliberately paced show.
Yeah, it's super contemplative. I think you described it as the elevator scene from Evangelion and made the entire program. And boy, do you remember the flame wars around that motherfucker.
Oh God, I learned when sort of doing some research for this show so I could figure out what the fuck I was gonna talk about. It was at times accused of sort of aping the sort of tone and intentions of Neon Genesis Evangelion, although apparently no one on staff had actually seen Evangelion until partway through the series.
Amazing.
So I guess it was just there was just a certain time in Japan.
I think that whole sentiment is sort of a side effect of, I think when you're deep tissue into a certain level of hobbydom, like the kind of person who would have watched and thought about both Eva and Lain, you're not really someone who does other things. And I think if you just watch fucking movies, you can see why they both have these moments for better or worse.
Yeah.
Like it is...
I don't have anything insightful to add, just, yeah.
I don't know, that's my deep cut on that part of the discourse. It's just, there is just a certain mode of contemplative movie that, whether you like it or dislike it, I don't know, it's just one of the default tones, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Contemplate your navels. Alright, so our second show, also heady, but with a lot more elements of, let's say, pop music. We did a bit of Steins Gate.
Steins Gate, I was expecting to be a little bit more brain-hurty than it ended up being. I think if I get further into this show, it probably will end up being more brain-hurty, it being, a time travel show with a whole bunch of, alternate timelines and shit. But, so credit immediately where it is due, and actually, you sort of say that about something that you don't like, and I did like this quite a bit. I actually have very few, real bits of stinging criticism or anything about it. The immediate credit that is due to this show is that it does a very good job kind of easing you into its premise. I think the fact that it's a 2-core show is probably why it was able to have that kind of time, because I think I went into it expecting that this was just going to start trying to fuck with me immediately. And yeah, it does just a little bit, but then after it's done doing so, it kind of like allows you time to sit down and breathe and figure out just a little bit what had happened before getting back sort of into the, sci-fi premise of it.
Yeah, it does a very good job of pacing on information. It actually reminded me a lot of these old fantasy writing workshops where they would say, like, you want to try to charm your audience a bit before you try to hit them with the whammy of your proper system pronouns, what you call fucking magic in your world. And I'm obviously talking about science fiction, but I don't know, fantasy is like sci-fi's retarded brother, so it's similar thoughts in terms of pacing on information and making sure people actually understand what the fuck you're trying to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Steins Gate did a very fun job of that. It does prime you for where things are going with its, like, this little opening monologue, which...
Very different between the sub and the dub.
Oh yeah, big difference between sub and the dub. The dub was, from past episodes, you, the abstract collective you as a pronoun, that we appreciate a good or even neutral dub often over subs. It makes us some kind of heathens in this community, but whatever, man. I'm 20. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. And However, the Steins Gate dub was just hurting my loins, like really just clogging up my vas deferens, man.
I was. It was a little awkward, yeah.
Maybe more of a direction thing than the actors. Like, I know you were saying, like, the guy who played fucking Scar in Brotherhood was...
Oh yeah, he plays the main character in Steins Gate in the dub. Like it's a I was looking through what the dub cast looks like, and it's, all of them are very talented. I honestly do not think that I want to say that any of these voice actors really aren't talented. I mean, I think it has a little bit more to do with a lot of the time the material that they're working with, the line production, that sort of thing. Sometimes it just doesn't go the way that you want it to.
Yeah, these things are easy to get wrong under the fucking best of circumstances, and I don't know, maybe it really picks up, but I guess just those opening 4 minutes where we just left our legitimate dub and unfurled black sails to the land of piracy.
All right, here's actually the thing. A lot of the time, right, in anime, you will have, the girl who has the really high voice or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds fine in Japanese. And then they sort of decide that they want to emulate it in English, and it never doesn't feel affected. I think that's...
Yeah, that is a big part. That
was at the core of what the problem was with this dub, because it's okay. I get it. Use not your voice necessarily, but a voice that does not seem that immensely affected.
That's actually a good insight. Like, I hadn't thought about that particular granule of localization, but that has tanked the watchability of more than one Channel 32 special. That was Cartoon Network in my world, which is also Toonami.
It was 32, yeah.
All that shit.
It was
together.
It came up between Morgan and I, right? When we were watching Brotherhood for a 12th time at one point, where Morgan, if they have anything that they dislike about Full Metal Alchemist, like specifically the dub, because I don't know, like I discovered Full Metal Alchemist when I was like fucking 10, right? I watched the dub. When Brotherhood came out, I watched the dub. The only negative thing they had to say about Brotherhood was the fact that Mei Chang was kind of a little bit on the annoying side. And I really do think it is because they choose to direct these voice actors to affect, the whole super squeaky, high-pitched, anime girl voice. And I do not think that it is, perhaps necessary all the time. Now, it could be that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but that's just always been, I don't know, if dubs have... Or rather, if dubs deserve any of the shit that they get, I would say that particular choice is the only one that I really generally agree with.
I think that's fair. I think we should probably lay some general ground down on Steins Gate.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Instead of the super uncondensed or non-condensed format of Lain, where the premise can sort of be described as, the internet's starting to happen.
It's like the internet's starting to happen. There's a girl. She may be more than one girl, but not really. Yeah, this one is pretty. This one's pretty straight on. A nice frame for a sci-fi show is that we have a guy who's essentially an unqualified crank, implied to be either a dropout or just college student.
He's a freshman.
He's a freshman, okay.
For whatever reason, his character design makes him look like he's 30. I think he just doesn't get a whole lot of sleep, but he's a freshman.
A change in anime style over time. Like, I think if I could unfuck my brain from all the other anime I watch, I would have scanned him as maybe younger than I did, but...
I guess it's the shape of his head, I think. I think it's the shape of his head because, all of these fucking anime high school students, and he's literally not even a year out of high school if he's only 18, right? They all have that sort of, I don't know, kind of acorn-shaped head, and he just fucking doesn't. It makes him seem like he's far older than he is, but it also it makes his character design stick just a little bit more in your head than it otherwise might. So I would say it gets points there at the very least.
But yeah, before it gets to its crunchy stuff with world lines and alternate paths and all that shit, it does a good job of laying down some charm, and that has the amusing frame for a sci-fi thing of essentially decoding all of this in the hand of a sort of hack or fake or neophyte.
He's
Like, he's basically a scientific conspiracy theorist thrust
I don't
into
think he's a
actually-
moron, but I do think that he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
The word I would use is crank. He's kind of a crank.
Kind of a crank, yeah. It also has this thing that I don't see too much, but I love it. It's this trope that I really love. It's in Futurama all the goddamn time, right? Which is shitty super science.
Yeah.
Which is to say that a machine is built that does something that is impossible, only it doesn't fucking work that well. It's one of the reasons that I love Star Wars Episode 5 as much as I do, because of the idea of, the Millennium Falcon, right? Or just spaceships in general in Star Wars, right? This thing that is impossibly complicated and difficult to do in real life, and it just, works in Star Wars, only not very well a whole lot of the time.
Just
The thing
shit
wouldn't
falling off
fucking
it.
jump to light speed. And, what we have here in Steins Gate is this microwave that, is designed to turn things into goo, but when used correctly, or I guess incorrectly, can send emails back in time. Except it often does not work very well because it is just a jury-rigged microwave at the end of the day. And there's something about that I really love. And it probably just started with Star Wars.
It has natural comedic value. It even adds a bit to the conflicts, and just it feels like you're playing against the world with, I don't know, a pea shooter or just a straw with a fucking spitball in it.
Yeah. It does a whole lot to sort of kind of codify very early on this show's tone and aesthetic. That these are... This is not a professional setup. These people have very little idea what they're doing. They are not qualified to be involved in a plot as sort of heavy on the consequences as this is. And yet here we are anyway.
Oh man, when it comes to some of the consequences that Hideo Something gets into, by the way, I am personally convinced that there is some shit that is in this show literally just to get it made, like just to get it through the producers.
Oh, like the maid cafe?
Like the fucking cat maid cafe. I was like, okay, collect your dollars, come on, jangle your keys for the public. Which isn't to say the show isn't charming. In fact, its charm is probably one of its best assets and what sort of pulls you into.
Yes, I think if the show was not
stakes.
so charming, its whole premise would be a whole lot harder to swallow. It does a very good job, like we were saying, it does a very good job in making you care before it starts getting into the head-hurty aspect.
Putting these two next to each other, it kind of makes me... The interesting thing about science fiction is that unless you're going to do some kind of hyperformals where it's just like a fucking tech manual from the future, you always need to figure out what kind of sugar or like form of engagement you're going to put in with the serial of the concept there. Like,
Well, in this case,
gonna
it's
be
the
the-
dialogue.
is it going to be like the dialogue and this thing, or I guess what makes Lain so unconventional is that the choice is not usually less cinematographique.
Yeah, perhaps
That's the
not.
ro-
I think
but that's the route they went for with Lain, and it works for it. But I guess I am far more likely to rewatch a Steins Gate.
yeah, probably. I
It
think
probably has something to do with my decayed attention span as a fucking human being. But
well, Steins Gate is like you said, it's just very good pop music.
yeah,
Whereas Lain, I would not call it that. I would call Lain like Brian Eno or something.
yeah. So we got Eno versus Gaga in this episode of Weeaboo Hell.
Oh, I need to listen to that new album. Apparently, it's like real good. Or is it not even out yet? I don't know.
I don't know. I know the single's out. It's called "Stupid Love," which is amusing tone to a divorced lad like myself.
And I think Robert Rodriguez directed the video, or as I've heard. I still need to watch. I don't know. My interactions with the world, lately have just been, ooh, let's watch an anime from however many years ago.
Oh, yeah. Everything we're up to right now is really in the genre of maintaining sanity and not going all John Wilkes Booth. Do I have to fucking edit that out? Whatever. Now... All right, hey, viewers. That line was a secret between you and me, okay?
Don't tell nobody.
Don't tell nobody. Or I'm gonna have to try to just hack together a fucking microwave time machine and go back in time and say, hey, fucko, stop making public jokes about going all fucking Grassy, no, I did it twice. That's 2. Okay. Moving on.
I really hope that my mic is not picking up the fucking car alarm that keeps going off outside.
I can't hear it, and I don't know, maybe they'll put it in a certain place in time in history in hindsight. We'll call that part of our artful production.
Okay.
There's a lot of, this is a total minor note, it's just amusing to me. There's a lot of blushing's disease, I call it, in the show. It's just that thing in anime where a female character will blush every 45 seconds.
Yeah, I feel like that happens in anime and just animation way the fuck more than it happens in real life. I mean, it's understandable because
I guess it's a cue that's easier to animate than act.
Well, here's the thing: when you're dealing with animation, especially on television, right? You're allowed quite a bit fewer frames, I guess. Right? You're there's less nuance that you were able to portray on a character's face. So you sort of have to rely on shorthands like this. So I get it. I get why this trope exists. Why, like instead of something, but why, in the absence, I guess, of, the, subtle facial movements that you really do not have the time or budget for, you have them blush. Or you give them the cross-popping veins.
And it also goes back to, once again, I am convinced that there is some shit here that exists to give people something familiar to latch onto.
Probably for both reasons, honestly. Like, it exists or came into existence as a shorthand, but now it's, kind of just to be expected.
The show sort of has... I mean, I think we may sort of part ways in to what degree they are, but the show sort of has a light waifu gallery thing going on.
Yeah, we were talking about that while we were watching, weren't we? I see where you are coming from, certainly. I'm a little bit more inclined to give the show the benefit of the doubt. I think waifu galleries kind of belong to much more cynical shows than this one. It certainly does have, a bunch of very unique character designs, especially for the women in the cast, right? Who all seem to be of various different subcultures, I guess. They have like very different looks. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about the idea of a waifu gallery, what I'm sort of implying is that I am being sold a bunch of like vaguely fan servicey character designs. In the absence of anything better. With this, I did not really get that sense so much.
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense more that, they perhaps had a little bit of fun with the character designs. But honestly, everyone feels so very much alive and non-generic that I really want to give them more of the benefit of the doubt in this case.
By the way, speaking of the benefit of the doubt, I think this is very funny to me.
But that one girl is totally just wearing cat ears around. So,
that's a lost front, and I think you have a fair point. I guess I just like to take my digs where I can. In terms of giving themselves the legal benefit of the doubt, changing CERN to CERN with just an S, and then making them a murderous organization.
The IBN.
Dude, at that point, if they're gonna sue you, they're gonna sue you. I say nut up, point at the Large Hadron Collider and say, they're trying to take over the world, and let security drag you out of the room.
That was a really fun weekend, by the way. You were talking about while we were watching, no one was convinced that there weren't a bunch of fucking xenomorphs that weren't gonna pop out of that thing if they turned it off.
Yeah, I was everyone's just stocking up on fucking baseball bats and protagonist speeches and trying to find the fucking construction equipment suit from Alien 2.
I just wanted to oh no, it's fine. We're just gonna collide a couple of hadrons. What does that mean?
No one is laying eggs in my mouth. You hear me?
I remember being on Reddit and, just people who knew more than I did were talking about it. Like, oh yeah, there's that, sort of off, outside chance that they accidentally reset the universe or whatever. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? But it's a very outside chance. It's probably not going to happen.
Fucking seg fault in the simulation.
I don't know, maybe they just succeeded in creating this weird fucking timeline.
We talk about the memory and ingenuity it takes to succeed in science, but sometimes just the courage of knowing that you have a 0.5% chance of resetting the world into some kind of wackadoo Sixin Liu novel. Now you fucking pronounce
That's
it?
a
Whatever.
really fucking... If the stakes are resetting the fucking universe and it's a 0.5% chance, like if you get it down to 0.001% chance, okay, fine, you can turn on that hadron collider. 0.5% chance, that still means what, like 1 out of every 200 times, right?
I think how far you could get in the sort of quantum fields is based on what number in your head it becomes acceptable. And I guarantee...
if there's any STEM people out here who think I'm a moron, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. This show is 2 fucking English majors, and my higher education just makes me a double English major. So, do forgive the ignorance behind our riffs here.
Yeah, I'm a
make
fucking
words
moron.
sound good.
I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. At least in this context.
But what I can say is this show makes words sound good, too.
Oh, it does the good word shit, yes.
Tickle brain nice. Much intrigue. I guess I should say that there's a well-managed mystery throughout the early stretch of this, of just the entire CERN thing that, oh fuck, spoiler town that we just jumped a bike into, I guess.
It's a 10-year-old show. Like,
Okay,
we can
yeah.
spoil it.
Your half-hour review of a 10-year-old show, you got spoiled on like a fucking mid-card plot point. Move forward with your lives.
I'm still kind of just laughing at myself for kind of psyching myself out about this show, expecting it to just lie to me at every point in time and expecting me to be a genius. It doesn't. You can follow it. I think it's probably going to end up being one of those series that's harder to describe, right, than to understand. Like the further you get into it. Mm-hmm. Sort of like how people who played Kingdom Hearts understand Kingdom Hearts. And many of them, most of them perhaps, are fucking morons. So it can't be that complicated. Maybe there's just so much time.
I want to write, before I die, a paper about Kingdom Hearts just called Conceptual Inbreeding.
Just the ability to... It has so much time to fucking build up. It's just endless fucking fuzz that it lives in.
And I think I could just change the world with my little song if I actually finish that.
I remember, I feel like it was like, what's his name? That one YouTuber, Brian David Gilbert, who tried to make like a YouTube video about the plot of that franchise, and it didn't work.
Great.
I could be misremembering his name, but he's with Polygon a whole lot of the time. I think some crossover appeal with the McElroy boys. I don't know. I think they're just all on that platform a whole lot.
By the way, in terms of things being precise products of their time,
mm-hmm.
I really like that this show was made at a specific point where a reference to like 2chan or 4chan meant funny basement dwellers and societal fringe
just weird,
instead of just
like internet weirdos.
Yeah,
who like are kind of into conspiracy theories.
Where the implications were more that instead of where the Nazis hang. It's a real timestamp.
I'll admit, I will occasionally go back to 4chan just to sort of poke my head in a little bit, and there is sort of a
all the time.
There's a growing sort of, anti-Nazi faction on that. Now, it does not at all redeem that website in the slightest, but I don't know. It always endeavored to be countercultural in all things, and now that the fucking culture on that thing is Heil Hitler, the counterculture is now,
Black
you should
humanity.
do what your Fuhrer did and blow your fucking brains out.
And in the end, isn't that what Weeaboo Hell is all about? Nazis should kill themselves and anime is fun too, I guess.
like that as a kind of series ethos. Yeah.
Excellent. And in terms of these series ethos, Steins Gate, you have don't fuck with time travel, and in Lain you have
the internet is
like
kind of scary.
Yeah. Watch out for those power lines, bro.
The power lines go bzzz.
But yeah, this has been Weeaboo Hell.
Sissy Weeaboo Hell.
J Sweet's Weeaboo Hell.
Wait, no, hold on. Sissy Nepage Weeaboo Hell. There we go. Now...
Sissy Nepage Weeaboo Hell. Can you tell which one of us took French classes? Pro tip: it's not this guy.
It was barely this guy.
You would not believe the fucking struggle empire it took to make that opening.
If you stick around till after the credits, we might include the outtakes. I don't know. Pas de quoi vous parlez. Je préfère... Nope, that was wrong. Fuck me. Let's try it again. Bienvenue à Weeaboo Hell. Now, fuck me. That's not it. It needs to be like more, with gravitas.